But let's go ahead and start with a quick prayer, and then I will have John introduce Cristofer properly. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, you are the source of all true friendship and love. In all my relationships, may your love be my constant guide for choosing what is good and for rejecting what is contrary to your will. We ask all things through Jesus' name, amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. John, thank you for setting up this Zoom call for us and working while you're working. So with that, I will let John go ahead and introduce Cristofer, and then Cristofer, with that, you can just go ahead and jump into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Those of you on the recording, we're glad that you're here. It is my pleasure to introduce this gentleman. When I think of him, I think of first and foremost a father, a passionate, vocational leader of his family that aligns with what God is calling him to do, which is to bring more souls to heaven. I also think of him as a friend because we've had the chance to meet virtually many times. And then once we got to break bread finally one bright morning in California. So I thank God for that. I just thank God for this man and his work. If you're not familiar with the Tepeyac Leadership Institute or his book, Catholics in Civil Society, let me know. I'll buy you lunch and tell you all about it. That's on recording. So I just said that. But I don't have much more to say because that encompasses a huge amount. And I want to hand it right over to Chris. He's going to tell us everything that we need to know about the Tepeyac Leadership Institute and how to be better Catholics in civil society. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Joe, John, Blake, everybody. So generous of you to inviting me to be part of this gathering and share with your group. Um, I guess the first thing I would say is that I never actually thought of myself as a speaker. Never set out to be a speaker. About 6-7 years ago, I signed up for this gig, which was to develop leaders. And along the way, we discovered that it would be a very good tool to put into a book sort of the vision for what we had been developing through our leadership development program. That's how Catholic Leadership for Civil Society came about. The book is doing amazingly well on the internet all over the world. It's just really is humbling to see how much value people are finding in the content. So I'm now very excited to accept invitations to speak. Sometimes it's virtually, sometimes I travel to places. So I'm happy to be with you this morning. But I think it's important before we go into the idea of Catholic leadership for civil society, and actually, um, I think I'll do a pause here. Can you give me an idea of the time that I have to speak, John, so I can pace myself? How much time would you like me to speak? And then I can stop for questions afterwards.
Yeah, probably 30, 40 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right. That's plenty of time.
All right.
I'll probably do a little shorter than that. That's a lot of time. Thank you. So before I actually go into the concept, the idea of Catholic leadership for civil society, what I like to do is start with a little background on, I'll give you a little background of me, but a little background on how this came about, how the concept of Catholic leadership for civil society came about. About myself, John has already said the most important thing. I'm a husband and a father of four. I'm originally from Peru and I lived in the United States since I was 15. My background is an eclectic mix of journalism and business. I've been in insurance and real estate. And at some point, I found myself called by God to work for the church. And now I see that all of my previous work experiences kind of funnel into what I'm doing now. And what I'm doing now is what I truly consider to be my mission from God. This is why what I do, I don't consider a job, but something I'm just very passionate about. Um, about 7 years ago, I was working for Bishop Olmsted at the Diocese of Phoenix. I was the director of the Hispanic Mission Office in Phoenix. And as a representative of the diocese, I was sent to a civic leadership development program in Phoenix. It was a secular program. I was the only person that worked for a faith-based organization, or maybe I was the only person of faith in the program when I went there. Um, so about 7 years ago, when I went through this program, I discovered the world of civic leadership development. I've told this story to Blake and John, so they're more familiar with it. Um, I just didn't know. It wasn't on my radar that this existed. But then I realized it's all over the country. Just to give you an idea, there's such a thing as a National Association of Leadership Programs. It has about 200 members, and most of these are large nonprofit organizations with large budgets, a lot larger than our budget, who have been around since the 70s, sort of under the radar, but they're there. The people that need to know they're there, right? In all of the major cities and even in rural areas, they have these programs. They're all over the place. They take on names like Leadership Philadelphia, Leadership Los Angeles. I'm sure you have a Leadership Wichita. All of these programs are secular. They're all secular. And they all aim to do the same thing, while each of them takes on a different shape or flavor or format. For the most part, all of them aim to do the same thing, which is to form leaders, to bring professionals from different backgrounds, have them go through their programming, and then really push them into key leadership positions in their own communities. That's what this is about. So this is where most of our public elected officials around the United States get their feet wet in leadership, even before they go into politics. They start with these programs. But not just in the politics or government sector, for-profit and non-profit sector. A lot of people who are interested in leadership, they go through these programs. They go through more than one. They go through several of them, because in some cities, in the large cities, there are different programs. There are regional programs, there are national programs. So we did our homework and we realized that, unfortunately, most of the civic leadership development programs around the United States have been forming and are forming leaders with values that run directly opposed, directly counter to Catholic teaching. There are a few exceptions, but most of them do. So we thought, gosh, this is a novel concept. It's just not being oriented right? So I had several discussions with Bishop Olmsted, who's really the visionary behind the work that we're doing. And he gave me his blessing to develop Tepeyac Leadership Initiative. And we basically borrowed the template from the secular world and created, as far as we know, the only civic leadership development program with a Catholic lens, right? And I know there are a couple of other apostolates around the country that maybe there is a little overlap, but for the most part, I think we're the only Catholic apostolic that's doing what we're doing with that exact precise focus, which is to form Catholic leaders for civil society, right? Very concretely, board service is the big thing that we promote in our program. We believe that ultimately Catholics need to be present at every table where decisions are made, those decisions that impact the culture. So about 7 years ago, we developed TLI. As we began doing our homework to develop the curriculum and the content for the program, we ran into the teachings of our faith and most specifically the documents of the Second Vatican Council that speak directly to the laity, right? And those of you who are familiar with the Council are familiar with these documents, Gaudium Espes, Christi Fidelis Laici, Apostolicum Actuositatem. A recurring theme of the council is this invitation, this bold, urgent challenge to the laity. So we discovered that we were setting out to do, which was to create a civic leadership development program, a Catholic civic leadership development program, was actually something that the church had already called us to do. And as we began to dig a little deeper, we realized not only the church has asked us to do this, but it also has been a message that has been widely neglected. Because you will agree with me that today, when you hear people talk about the Second Vatican Council, most people, most Catholics will focus on two aspects of the gospel: the changes in the liturgy and the ecumenical aspects of the gospel. And Catholics will argue about those all day long. But I mean, by far, most people miss the mark on what the consul had to say directly to us, to the laity. And what the consul says in the pages of these documents is that we, the laity, our vocation is that of being in the world while not being of the world. We are charged with the mission of um, really entering into the secular institutions of society as to transform it from within, right? Because our beloved, our Pope, our bishops, our priests, they cannot influence society in the same way that we can. They have a way to influence society, but not the way that we can from within the institutions of society by seeking to become influential leaders in those institutions, right? I mean, the clergy cannot or should not run for office. They cannot sit at just any board. They can sit at some boards. They cannot engage society in the same manner that we can. And that's our vocation. Many lay people are confused, and you have seen this. I have been there myself. Many of us have been there. When a lay Catholic has an experience of encounter or re-encounter with Christ, they end up being so fired up for the faith that they wanna find their place in the church. And what do? We tend to go back to the parish and sign up for every ministry or apostolate that we can. And sometimes we set up a tent, I often say, and camp at the parish. But that's not our vocation. That's not our vocation, right? And we're not saying, I'm not saying that we're not supposed to be involved or part of our parish community. Absolutely, we should. We also should be supportive to our pastors whenever they need us for anything. And we should always be going back to the church to get the sacraments and to continue to receive formation whenever those opportunities are available. But our true field of mission, it's in the world. It's not at the parish all day long. So this is sort of this is how we began to develop the ideas that are contained in our program, Tepeyac Leadership Initiative, and in our book, Catholic Leadership for Civil Society. This idea that we should begin to change the chip about the ways in which us, the lay people, can help advance the mission of the church. We want to become more strategic about the way in which we advance the mission of the church. Because if God bless somebody with a law degree, maybe someone has been put into a privileged finance position in a large corporation, or so many Catholics are in the C-suite as well, right? Some people have the opportunity to run for office. Um, all of these places need to be influenced with the values of the gospel. That's what our mission is. And as leaders, we have this tremendous opportunity to do that if we intentionally seek to become influential leaders in society. So we put together this curriculum that really what it does is it explores all of these areas of secular life or human activity, right? We have some of them, many of them we touch on the book, and through our program, we have a session on education, healthcare, business, government, news media, philanthropy, board service. We talk about Catholic social doctrine, human dignity, always approaching each of these from the Catholic lens, drawing from the teachings of the church. We put in front of the participants, experts, really top-notch, seasoned leaders who are experts in their fields. And we talk about the concrete ways. This is how we teach leadership. We focus on different areas of human activity. And we talk about the concrete ways in which the laity can fill those gaps and lead in their own community, right? So the entire experience becomes this beautiful discernment process for the participants where they are entering into this dialogue with God, asking Him to show them where it is concretely that they're being called to lead. So that by the end of the program on graduation night, each of our graduates presents his or her own individual concrete leadership commitment, something that they're going to set out to do as leaders, as Catholic leaders for civil society. Very often it involves board service. Many times it involves things like engaging their community through philanthropy. And we have already had some of our graduates who have felt a calling for public service and are preparing themselves to run for office. One of them is already running um, for office at the local level. And this is what we wanted to accomplish. This is the fruit that we wanted to get, and we're seeing it already. So along the way, when we developed our curriculum, our program, we wrote this book, we discovered a couple of things. God has shed some light on what it means to be a Catholic leader for civil society. The first thing that we discovered is that you needed to have a working definition for leadership, or for what a leader is. And and now that I have about 7 years into the leadership space, I realized that there's really no consensus on what a leader is. It really is this thing that most of us can instinctively recognize, but most people also have a hard time defining just exactly what a leader is. And there are several definitions. For example, in the corporate world, the one that most of you are familiar with, when you grab a book on leadership, or you go to a workshop or a seminar or buy a video, there's an enormous industry around the concept of leadership. Most of the time in corporate America, when they talk about leadership, what they really mean is management. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the right terminology, because they mean management. And they're in corporate America, they're thinking about a leader, but they're really thinking about a manager, somebody who's efficient, who's effective, who can use the resources and the human capital at his disposal or her disposal to accomplish goals efficiently. Um, in the church, for example, when we think about leadership, typically the first thing that comes to mind is the hierarchy of the church, right? People think about the Pope and the cardinals, the bishops, and we start thinking of that pyramid. But even then, we're thinking about titles. We're not really talking about what a leader is. When you look up the dictionary, it's of no help either. Now, I've looked in English and Spanish, and the definition is very similar. It says that a leader is someone who leads others. So the dictionary is of no help. It doesn't really give you a roadmap. Um, so we have borrowed, for the work that we do, we have borrowed the definition from our friends, the Virtuous Leadership Institute. If you're not familiar with them, you ought to look up their concept. They put together these wonderful workshops, most of the time in the educational space. But the Virtuous Leadership Institute, which is based on the work of Alexander Havard, this wonderful man from France, um, who wrote the book Virtuous Leadership, defines leadership, a leader, as someone who accomplishes great things by bringing out the greatness in others. So we like that definition. That's the definition that we use for the work that we do. So a leader is someone who accomplishes great things, brings about great outcomes by bringing out the greatness in others, right? So a leader inspires, a leader serves others, right? So that's our definition for leadership. The space in which we invite the people, our stakeholders, the people that read our book, that go through our program, where we invite you to consider exerting this type of leadership is uh, civil society. Civil society. This is where we think is badly needed. This is where we think Catholic leadership is badly needed. So we're actually very excited because we're about to come out with this. This was a very exciting year for us. We're about to launch, to release on October 1st, a short documentary film that we produced. So I invite all of you to go to our YouTube and Facebook page, and on October 1st, you'll be able to watch it free. You'll be able to just play it. It'll be available for viewing. It's a short 13-minute documentary that we put a lot of resources and heart into, and it conveys the ideas that I'm sharing with you today. But one of the things that we say in the documentary is that it's not enough to want to go out and lead, because many times we're going to be inspired. We're going to feel that we want to do something. There are so many different things going on in the world right now. There are so many different issues that have us concerned as Catholics, and we should be concerned that we want to act. But before we lead, we must prepare ourselves. Before we go out and lead, we must take the time, do the homework, invest in ourselves to be ready to lead, to be Catholic leaders in civil society. So another thing that we discovered while developing our program is that there are three things that we call the fundamentals of Catholic leadership for civil society. Things that we just, as a Catholic leader in civil society, we just have to um, have a good grasp on. The first two are really things that we need to learn, right? The first one is um, a good understanding of the church's teaching on the dignity of the human person. We're not ready to lead in civil society if we don't understand where the dignity of the human person comes from. And I think many of you probably have a good understanding of that, but we can always continue to go a little more in depth in our understanding, because if you think about it, just about everything the church teaches or focuses on surrounds the idea of the dignity of the human person. Everything. If we talk about um, healthcare, immigration, women, children, the elderly, it's all about the dignity of the human person. We need to have a very good grasp on that. The next one is a good understanding of Catholic social doctrine. Now that will take a lot more. There's a lot. As you know, our church, um, which is a master in humanity. That's what the Catholic Church is a master in humanity. The church has seen the world evolve, and it has learned it has learned because it has received inspiration from the Holy Spirit, but it has also learned because it has simply observed humanity unfold over 2,000 years. So in Catholic social doctrine, we can find that our beloved Catholic Church has spoken, has written documents, magisterial documents on labor, on education, on government, on religious liberty, on human dignity, on women, on marriage, on life, on just about every topic. So we come into all of these difficult decisions that we have to make as leaders, and sometimes we don't know where to turn for guidance. We have this well of information, of wisdom accumulated in the writings of the popes and in so many magisterial documents that point the way, and the church will always offer to us principles, not policy, principles, so that we, the laity, that's another distinction. We, the laity, can discern what the proper policy should be for our local reality, right? So a good grasp of the church's teaching on human dignity, Catholic social doctrine. And the third one is the third fundamental for Catholic leadership in civil society is entering into a lifelong commitment to growth in virtue. We cannot be effective Catholic leaders for civil society if we don't realize that we're called to be holy, that we're called to be saint. And if we don't try to live that out in our professional lives. So just like developing any muscle, if we want to grow in virtue, we simply need to practice virtue. And the more we practice virtue, the more virtuous we will become. And as we grow in virtue, we'll be shaping a character, we'll becoming a person of integrity, right? Once we become people of integrity, upon that, we can build by growing in the virtues that are proper to the leader, which are, we have learned that there are two virtues that are proper to a leader. You can be a virtuous person, you can be a person of integrity, can be a person of character, but to be a leader, you need to have humility. That first one doesn't come as a surprise. And the other one is magnanimity. You need to be magnanimous. Leaders are magnanimous, right? People who have a great heart, who want to do great things for God's greater glory. So those are the three fundamentals of Catholic leadership for civil society. And we believe that when a lay Catholic professional, particularly professionals, not exclusively professionals, but professionals, Catholic professionals, have been equipped by God and are really in a privileged position to influence society. Right? When a lay Catholic professional does the homework, invests in him or herself to grow in virtue, then they're ready to grow in virtue, to build a character, to understand the teachings of the church on Catholic social doctrine and human dignity. They are ready to go out and lead. And there are so many different fields in just secular society where we can have an impact, right? Um, I think the last thing I'll say, and then we can open it up for questions if you want to have a discussion, is that through the work that we do, one thing that we understand, that we have realized as well, we work with a lot of young professionals. Our program is not just for the young, but it's actually open to anybody. But we tend to get a lot of millennials that want to participate in our program. And we've discovered that millennials, young professionals, they're very thirsty, they're very hungry for a better understanding on two things. And we've also realized that these are perhaps the two things in which society is the most confused today. And these are identity and purpose. So throughout our program, and every time I speak, we try to make sure that we all understand that all of us baptized have a common identity and a common purpose. And this must be very clear, because we're all individuals, right? God made us, each of us is unique, but that is built uh, upon a common identity and a common purpose as well. We need to understand that so that we can have a proper understanding of who we are and why we're here, why we were made by God, right? So all of us baptized are children of God. That's who we are. We're all children of God. That's our common identity. And then from there, each of us, of course, is an individual. And because we're children of God, from that understanding of who we are, flows or should flow an understanding of why we're here, why God made us. He made us for heaven. He made us for holiness. That's our common purpose. Our common purpose is heaven, you know, and is, for me, it's very frustrating actually that in the church we don't speak enough about holiness. How often do you hear a homily on holiness on Sunday? I mean, maybe you got lucky and you do, but we talk about all of these things that are so important, yes, but we don't talk about the purpose of our lives often enough. We don't hear those messages clearly enough. We were created for heaven. We were created for holiness. That is the purpose of our life. Just like a hammer was created to hammer on and a saw to saw on. And it's fulfilling its purpose of existence when it's doing what it was designed to do, created to do. And it will never be happier or more fulfilled as to when it is doing what it was designed to do. Just like that, we were created for holiness. And we need to have that very clear. So Catholic leadership, civil society, our professional careers, our vocation, if we have a vocation for the married life, all of those are our means to sanctification. When we understand that, we can put heart and love into everything we do it with striving for perfection and offering it up to God as a gift every time we do our work. Every day when we arrive at the office, we start by offering the day to God, and then we try to focus and refocus every day, because we'll get distracted at times, and try to put a lot of work and love into our work and attention to detail, so that we can present to God a good offering, because you cannot give God just a pusillanimous offering. If you're going to offer something to God, it has to be good. That includes our work. And guess what happens? When you realize that your job is your means to sanctification, and you strive for professionalism and, and, and human perfection, which means doing things to the best of your capacity, then people begin to notice. your peers begin to look up to you. You begin to stand out because you're doing things really well. And those opportunities to grow in leadership and in influence are good. They come to you, and we must not um, reject them. The traditional Catholic mindset does not immediately think of becoming influential as a good way to do apostolate, to influence others for Christ. We think, oh no, the church is calling me to be humble. And yes, God calls us to be humble, but that's not opposed with seeking to grow in professional prestige. Because when you become a person that's known by doing his or her job really well, people will look up to you. People will, and they will come to you and ask you, what is the secret to your joy? And those are the wonderful opportunities you have to influence others. And you will be sitting at tables where important decisions are made, decisions that influence the culture. And that all happens when you understand who you are, when you understand your purpose in life. And with that, I think I'll pause right there. That's probably a lot less than what you asked me in time, but I think we can do better we can do more in the Q&A.
That was excellent. Thank you. Hopefully you can hear from the room if anybody has questions.
I have a question. Do any of the ideas that I have touched on, and I just basically listed ideas, I haven't gone in depth into anything, sound foreign or new or surprising to anybody? It's all the teaching of the church. It's just some of these things maybe at times we don't think often enough.
So I bring up the aspect to my children that they're my little saints. And I say that lightly, but I think that you really hit home that like our purpose, all of our purposes are to be saints. And I think that I try to put a bunch of effort into my children because I feel very blessed and I love them dearly. And I know that they only have so many years under my roof. But I think it's important for us to realize that being a saint is, like you said, having, our all and everything. And when we're saints, we're striving to do better. And for a child, it's easy for them to want to know their purpose. But I think as an adult, we equally need to know that our profession is a gift from God. And it's not through our works that we are where we are or that we excel. It's because God has, led us to where we are, and just really thinking more about ourselves and the difference that we can personally make in the world.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. Yes. And we have such a privileged opportunity to influence society as parents. So many people don't realize what an enormous, tremendous way we have to influence society by simply raising the children, the men and women that society needs.
So Cristofer, if I may take the privilege here, sorry to interrupt anybody there in Wichita, but the thing that stood out to me that seemed new was this idea of the virtue of magnanimity. For one, never thought of that as a virtue before. Two, I'm curious, and I love in Catholic social doctrine so many things that hold each other in tension, right? That the humility would balance the magnanimity, right?
Yes.
And that's beautiful created reality. But I'm curious, and maybe this is in line with what you were saying, but as a father, a husband, how does this come to fruition in your family life?
Magnanimity.
How do you advise your children? How do you tell your children to be humble and magnanimous at the same time?
Well, I believe in speaking with your children very often. And so I put my children aside and tell them, listen, we're going to do a dad talk. And I mean, thank God, I think God has, there's nothing wrong with recognizing your gifts. I want to premise this. There's nothing Catholics tend to have a hard time sometimes recognizing your gifts. It's okay to recognize our gifts because we know they come from God. They are not ours. He gave them to us, and He can also take them away. And just like we have gifts, we have a lot of flaws. I have so many flaws. But I think I can communicate, even with my accent, I can communicate ideas intelligibly. And I think my children, to my surprise, enjoy some of my dad talks. I try to keep it short. So I believe that speaking with your children is so important. And it's like a basic thing. We all know we're supposed to speak to our children, but when do people actually speak to their children? I look around, I look at my family and my relatives and other families, my neighbors, and I ask them, how often do you talk to your children? We all know we should do it. We don't do it often enough. And I try to be very intentional about speaking with my children. And I do it in the car. I don't make it overcomplicated. I make it when I see that it fits. We're taking a walk, we're driving. Hey guys, I want to give you this really quick talk about this topic. I think this is important. And we talk, and I give them this talk, and I see if they have questions. So I have talked to them about magnanimity. I have talked to them, listen, I want you to remember this word. I want you to understand what it means, because you were called to do something great with your life. You were called to do something heroic. Think of your lives as this amazing adventure where you can do something great for the common good to build up God's kingdom. And and then the other day, I don't know where we were, don't remember where we were. Um, Somebody used the word magnanimity and defined it, and said, "I bet you kids don't know what it means." And my children all look at each other and then look at me. But yeah, that's what I think, that our parenting must involve recurrent and intentional conversations with our children about all of these things. I can't think of a single topic that I have not spoken to my children about, because I know they're going to hear about it somewhere else. So I'd rather they hear it from my perspective.
Christopher, thank you so much. I'm very impressed. So I really enjoyed your the conversation and listening to you this morning.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
And I was also thinking about whenever you talked about the importance of being a leader, not just at the church. I couldn't help but to keep thinking, basically taking stewardship to the community versus just and so I started asking questions like the difference between leadership and stewardship, because I couldn't help myself but to keep thinking, basically, instead of just going to the church and offering services, we need to do a better job at offering in the community. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on maybe the difference, or
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. So Joe, what parish do you go to?
I'm Greg. This is Joe's computer. So I
Okay, I'm sorry, Greg.
No,
That's
you don't
right.
need to
I'm gonna
apologize.
call
It's
everybody
right.
Joe. Greg, what parish do you go to?
So I go to St. Peter's Schulte most. So
How long have you been going to that?
well, since
St. Peter's?
2006.
2006. And are you involved in any apostolates or ministries
I'm not.
or not?
It's I'm embarrassed to say that I'm not.
Okay.
I was married. I'm no longer married, but I was married, and that was our parish. And
Okay.
so my daughter goes to school there, and I live on the other side of town. But I go there to watch her serve and lecture and sing. But I live
Oh, all right.
that town,
Okay.
so I don't ever really participate, and I should. So, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you are participating as while you bring your daughter to all of these things. I think that you are plugged into your parish for sure, and I think that's a healthy connection to your parish. I think we all should be involved in our parish community. We all should find an apostolate. When a layperson participates on an activity in the church that's trying to uh, evangelize, this is called an apostolate. And sometimes I use the term ministry because many Catholics call it that way, and that's how they understand it. But ministries are for ministers and people who are ordained. What we do are apostolates. So in our parish community, we should get involved with some apostolate. We should involve with a Bible study, with a men's group, something. We should be doing something. We should be plugged into our parish community. It's a community. We should be part of it. Um, but I think that has to do more with the stewardship piece that you're asking, where you are giving the church directly, the church, some of your talent and treasure, right? I mean, you're definitely contributing to the parish, and maybe Father has noticed you and he asked you if you know a little bit about numbers to be in the finance council or in some type of committee. Uh, Father, our priests, our bishops, they need to rely on lay people, especially professionals, to carry out their work as well, right? So they're really dependent, almost, yeah, they're dependent on the talents of the laity so that they can do what they need to do. So we must avail ourselves and give of our talent and treasure to our parish. But we are called to be ambassadors of the faith in the world, in the secular world. That's where our true vocation is, our mission, our field of mission as lay people should be the secular world. So remind me of your professional track, your career,
I'm
Greg.
in healthcare. I'm in the healthcare industry. So
What
uh,
exactly do you do in healthcare?
we have a tech company and we help people move better so we can identify all of their ranges of motion and basically how they move and then compare them to the norms and help them move like they're
Okay.
supposed to.
So
Yeah.
you yourself are in technology within the health space.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Correct? Yeah. So it sounds to me like the mission of your organization already is working towards the common good. You're doing something good for society through the work that you do. That's already important. Even if you just stay there, you can maybe bring a renewed realization that the work that you do in technology within the health space is helping bring about the common good. It's really helping to make this a better world. And it is the means through which you are becoming a saint, so that when you make the difficult choices and you stay up late one day at work because there's so much to do, or you're solving all of these problems, you can realize that all of that is making you a saint, and you can offer it up to God every time you do it, right? But in terms of leadership, I am sure there are guilds or professional associations, either in the technology sector related to your specific role or in the health sector, that you can get involved with. There are conferences, there are chapters of associations that you can be a member of, that you could intentionally seek to be part of the leadership so that you can influence the industry itself. You see, in
Yep.
every space, in every field, in every professional track, there are opportunities for leadership. I think the national or regional guilds or associations, conferences, Catholics should get involved with all of that and should seek to occupy the spaces of leadership within those organizations. And now, outside of that, as a professional, you can in your community, there are Rotary clubs, Lion clubs, there are all kinds of civic organizations that we should join, and there are board service opportunities in our communities that we should seek. When we do that, everybody wins. The church wins because we have a person, ideally a well-formed, faithful, and committed Catholic, sitting at a table where decisions are being made. And that's how the church wins, because you are the voice of the faith, you're the voice of God in that space, right? The
Yep.
organization wins because you're bringing your talents into the decision making of that organization. And you win because something that just happens with board service is that you get wonderful connections, you get plugged in, business takes place, right? Sometimes opportunities for advancement in your own career. So board service is a win-win, and is definitely something that is more needed in terms of
Oh,
lay Catholics.
no, that's good. Thank you. I feel like if nothing else, this is my first meeting that I came to. So this morning I was like, I'm going to go. Maybe I didn't want to get out of bed, but I feel like I'm always too busy to get involved and do things. So this is good. This is maybe a start then. So I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me tell you just real quick, then we'll give a chance to somebody else to ask a question if they have one. But um, it's not just about getting busy. It's about doing the most with the time that you have allocated to do your job, and maybe a little extra. But the key is always to not neglect your relationship with God and your family, always. So yeah, high standards, while not neglecting your relationship with God and your family within that time that you have allocated for your job and the extra activities that you're going to get involved with, what you want to do is you want to get really efficient with that time. What I try to do in my life is I try to cram everything during the week. I do a lot of things. I try to cram it Monday through Friday. And maybe sometimes if I have to work a little late occasionally, I try to do it Monday through Friday. And I absolutely do not do anything Saturdays and Sundays. It's rare, very rare. Maybe if Bishop asks me to do something, I'll do it. But most of the time, I'm saying no all the time when it's something people want me to be part of an event or anything. I tell them, well, I prefer it during the week if we can do it during the week. So you set your own boundaries, and within that time, it really is about becoming very organized, Greg. Saint Jose Maria Escrivá, one of my good friends in heaven, he used to say, when you become more organized, you will realize how much extra time you actually have. So the key is organization. It's not about, we never want to get to the point where we're doing so many things and we're neglecting our relationship with God and our family.
That's great. Thank you.
See if I can do this, John. I'm gonna try to turn you around, sorry.
Hello, Christopher. I was interested in what you were talking about in terms of sort of the traditional mindset of Catholics kind of competing against this idea of being influential. And that's something I've always, kind of like, don't step forward a lot, don't want to put myself out in public. How would you, so I appreciated that insight that becoming influential can actually be a kind of holy ambition. How would you see it in terms of the inner character of the person being influential versus the external elements that we really work on trying to hone our speaking abilities and organizational abilities? And so I guess a distinction between the internal pieces and the external pieces.
Well, yes. Let me see if I get grasp the idea of your question. I think they're all connected, but I think becoming influential is not the same as becoming a good public speaker. Becoming a good public speaker is a great skill that everybody should be working on. Some people have been gifted with it more than others, but everybody can work at becoming a better speaker. But that's not necessarily becoming influential. In our program, for example, every year the participants select their class president. Typically, the class president is the most eloquent and outspoken person in the group is typically voted the class president. But I tell them at the end of the program, on the last session, we tell them, please never mistake an extrovert personality by leadership. Some leaders are extroverts and some leaders are introverts. So a leader is someone who inspires others and who serves others. And I bet everyone in this room can think of a person who is not the most outspoken person, but is so admired and looked up because of the integrity of the work that they do and the spirit with which he or she interacts with others, a spirit of service. That's a leader. That's a leader. Now, if the leader, in addition to that, has the skills to speak in front of a group and has other skills that we can all work on and grow on and should, well, that's a plus, right? But that's the leader. The leader is a servant, and the leader is someone who's seeking to inspire others by simply modeling the values of the gospel, right? The following the example of Christ himself. Now, in terms of professional prestige, we have a presentation in our program, and in the book we talk about professional prestige because some Catholics are afraid of professional prestige. We grew up, if you grew up in the church, you grew up with the idea that you were supposed to be humble. We saw all of those examples of saints throughout the centuries who were so humble and wanted to make themselves small to make God big, right? We use all of that language in the church. All of that still applies, but for us, if our vocation, which is not a vocation of religious life we're not called to live in a monastery. We're called to be in the world. If our vocation is to be ambassadors of Christ in the world, then we want to bring others to Christ, to the church. We want to become attractive. The key here is that our heart is always in the right place, because there's many reasons why we could do these things. We should always have that very clear, and we should always pray for purification of our intentions. I try to pray, ask that for God for that often. Please, God, Lord, purify my intention. Make sure that I'm always, and when people praise you, you do your work well, people will praise you. Sometimes the devil will use that to plant thoughts in your mind so that your intention begins to derail. So always continuously ask God to purify your intention so that you are always doing everything to give him the glory, to become a mirror, so that your life becomes a mirror for his light to shine through you. But it's not about you. If you have that clear and you continuously strive to purify that intention and to make sure that you're doing everything for his glory, seeking to become influential, seeking to grow in professional prestige is actually a very effective means to bring others to God. You need to look at it this way. What you're trying to do is inspire others to come closer to God. You want to become attracted to others. You want others to look at you and look at your life and ask, what is the secret to your joy? So becoming influential in our own spaces, seeking to grow in professional prestige is a very effective way to do apostolate, to bring others to God.
Thank you.
Well, Cristofer, thank you so much. I think that we need to go over a couple things as we close. One, the documentary comes out, you said October 1st.
October
Would you
1st.
say the name of that one more time for us?
The documentary is called The Hour of the Lady. And if you go to our account on YouTube or Facebook, Tepeyac Leadership's account on YouTube or Facebook, or if you send me your email, I'll add you to our newsletter, you'll receive a notice when the documentary comes out. But it's October 1st, and please watch it and share it.
I can't wait. And then in October, the application process for this cohort of the Tepeyac Leadership Initiative is open.
Yes.
And what are some of your advice for those that would be interested in that?
Absolutely. Most of the information can be found on the website, tliprogram.org. There is a frequent asked questions section. There's a section with testimonials. The application itself is there. You can see it. Applicants need a letter of recommendation and a resume. There's an admissions process in our program. You go through an interview. So from October 1st, the same day of the documentary comes out, to November 10 is the window when people can apply for admissions into our program and go through the process. The actual program, if you're admitted into the program, begins the second week of February and runs all the way through June.
That's wonderful. So those that are interested in that, that's open to everyone. It is we're excited to celebrate that it is now has global reach. You're got students and participants from all over the world. That's fabulous. The book is out. Get it now. It is Catholic Leadership for Civil Society. Hopefully I say that right. I know I've given a couple copies away. I know in Wichita, we're buying them by the case and distributing them as fast as we can. And then, of course, we want to thank you for your time today. And then you're also, CEO, right, of Tepeyac Leadership Initiative, which is the powerhouse behind this great evangelization and apostolate that you're running. So thank you so much, Cristofer, for getting up way early, putting on a suit, guzzling coffee, and then making an amazing presentation. I'm going to take away quite a bit from this myself. Joe, any last words from Wichita?
Thank you so much. We know it's a sacrifice to get up, but the work that you're doing is great and appreciated and influential here and beyond. So thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you all for the support. I can't wait to get to Wichita to meet you all in person. Thank you, Joe, John, Blake. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks.
God bless. Thank you.
We'll see you guys. Thank you.